Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. If you prefer to not be recorded and distributed live stream, please go to the LinkedIn Live video feed, the link to which I've just placed in the chat room. Tonight, our featured guest is jazz singer Martin Bonventre, whose eponymously titled new album will be the subject of tonight's conversation. Welcome, Martin.
Well, thank you for having me here, Simeon.
Martin, so tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, how your musical tastes were formed, and why you decided to become a professional jazz singer. But more than that, you call yourself, you're an actor, you're a performer.
Yes. Well, it all started because when I was a baby and in this apartment here that you see, my father used to put me to sleep with, instead of some lullaby, whatever it was, would put me to sleep as an infant with Frank Sinatra and Rosemary Clooney records. So, ever since then, that music seeped into my brain. So, if some other kid knew some lullaby, I knew I'll never smile again, something like that, And as time went on, I did my first cabaret show in New York at 13 years old. And funny enough, I had at that time a pianist who knew Margaret Whiting, the famous Margaret Whiting, brought me over to her apartment to sing for her. And she said, before I sang, she said A+ for appearance. And she loved what I did. I sang for her, someone to watch over me. And, she was teaching about the interpretation of the lyrics, and she would say, don't change this note because Gershwin wouldn't want that, all that stuff, all that crazy stuff. And then as, time went on, I did my first cabaret show at 13. She came to the show, and I was only 13 years old singing for her, and they wheeled her up. She couldn't walk at that time that well, so they brought her up the stairs. And as time went on, I started doing musicals. I started doing contracts for stage shows, and I sort of left this world. And people kept saying to me, you should do your own cabaret. You should do something like this. You should do jazz. You should, because this is in your wheelhouse. And then finally, I made the leap and decided, you know what? This is something that I should do, because this is something that I've been passionate about and that I've loved. Music is my first love over everything since I was basically 5 years old.
Okay, let's have a listen then. This is the first track. This is I'm All Smiles.
I'm all smiles, darling. You'd be too. If you knew, darling, all of the smiles were for you. I'm all chills, darling, through and through. But my cold hands, darling, warm to the touch of you. Rain hasn't fallen for days now, but rainbows are filling the skies. My heart must have painted those rainbows, shining before my eyes. Can't you tell that I'm in love, darling, deep and true, with guess who, darling, someone I'd die for, beg, steal a life for, eat humble pie for, someone to fly to the sun, moon, and sky for, someone to more touch with that cry for, and that someone is you.
So, Martin, this is going to be your debut album. It's coming out in a few months. So tell us about why you chose these songs, again, why this your debut album, and also you've got an upcoming show December 17th.
Yes, I do. So, about the album, a lot of these songs are lesser known. They're from Broadway shows, and they're hidden gems from Broadway shows. And a lot of times in a lot of these Broadway shows, you have these gems that suddenly become jazz standards. So what I've decided with my music director and voice teacher, the brilliant Jackie Presti, if you know who she is, she was in the original City of Angels on Broadway, and she is probably the best in the field, voice teacher in the field. We decided to come up with something where it was original, it was my own take on things. So instead of songs like something that somebody would hear like Fly Me to the Moon or Ain't That a Kick in the Head, we decided to veer away from that and do something like an I'm All Smiles, which was from the Broadway show The Yearling, which flopped. Also, Why Did I Choose You is from that show, which, as you know, many people have sung Why Did I Choose You. But the recording that I love the best, I think, of I'm All Smiles is Barbra Streisand from her People album. So a lot of it is stuff from shows and standards but we are making them our own and making them original and forward-thinking, as we say nowadays, forward-thinking. And also, my show at the Green Room 42, which is December 17th, I did this show in July, and I was asked the day after to come back, would I like to bring the show back? And I said, sure, I would love to bring it back. So the show is really all about the music. It's songs ranging from old days of Sinatra, Bobby Darin, all the way to Michael Jackson. And we have a couple of backup singers who are some of the best female singers I think that I've ever heard in my life, and I chose them. And we have a featured dancer, but we also have we have these musicians who are fantastic. First of all, Jackie Presti, who I talked about before, her husband, Greg Ruvolo, who is playing trumpet, played trumpet for Ray Charles, Frank Sinatra. He played trumpet for Ella Fitzgerald. He also played trumpet for 12 Broadway shows, and he's currently subbing in Chicago on Broadway. Jason Yeager, who is the pianist. Jason is married to Julie Benko, who is just recently the star of Funny Girl and Barry Manilow's Harmony. And he just did his solo show, well, not solo, but he did it with other people, this show of his own music. He teaches at Berklee College, but if you listen to Jason Yeager, he really is a phenomenal, outstanding pianist. Jeff Burke, who was on saxophone and also plays flute, and a lot of it, Jeff Burke plays for Harry Connick Jr. He subs on the Michael Jackson show on Broadway, and Jeff also is currently playing for Bonnie Raitt. Tony Tedesco, who's on the drums, has played for people like Vic Damone, and he played 42nd Street Revival. And he also played for Peggy Lee and Perry Como. Boots Mallison is he played 12 Broadway shows, and the producer of Our Sinatra, Jack Lewin, which was a show that ran off Broadway for ages, said that he was the best bassist in the field. And, working with these people who are masters at their craft, I think makes me better because, they often say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So, you want to work with people who have something better than what you have to offer. We all have different skill sets that what we can do and what we can learn from. So I feel I just get better being with them. And that's the whole crux of it. And also they're playing on the album. So it really does help a lot, I feel.
Okay, let's have another listen to this track, which is You Must Be Leaving Spring.
Believe in spring.
You must believe in spring. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You must believe in spring. There it is.
when lonely feelings chill the meadows of your mind. Just think if winter comes, can spring be far behind? Beneath the deepest snows, the secret of a rose is merely that it knows you must believe in spring. Just as a tree is sure its leaves will reappear, it knows its emptiness is just a time of year. The frozen mountain dreams of April's melting streams, how crystal clear it seems you must believe in spring. You must believe in love and trust it's on its way. Just as a sleeping rose awaits the kiss of May, so in a world of snow, of things that come and go, where what you think you know, you can't be certain of, you must believe in spring and love.
So, Martin, tell us about how you picked these musicians. That's a lovely piano playing. So what is it that you are looking for in a musician? You said that you kind of came into singing quite naturally. What's important to you?
Well, to me, the best thing I can think of when I think of musicians are people that really have technical skills, brilliant technical skills, that not just that, but really understand music of all genres, not just one specific genre, but all genres. And these guys, especially Jason, who plays piano, says, you have to listen to other kinds of music because it's like taking nutrients for your body. There's other forms rather than one form. So what I look for in musicians, especially these musicians, are people who, who play different things and know different things rather than one specific genre. And Jason, I spoke to Jason, I asked him because, there are jazz pianists who can specifically play jazz, but can play a piece by Bach or Handel. And I asked Jason once, you play classical, right? He said, of course, you have to know your classical. So, as a singer, I sang classical before I sang jazz. So it's all about doing that. I mean, you know this, Simeon, because you're a conductor. So that's what I look for.
And tell us a little bit about cabaret and the other aspects of your career. What when you say cabaret, I immediately think of Paris. I don't think of New York. Tell us what goes into that.
Well, I feel a lot that goes into cabaret is personal storytelling, and the audience should know something about yourself. And it also represents, I think, the individual artist that you are. So your show is going to be different than somebody else's show. And a lot of, I think that the vast knowledge of what I've developed as a performer, especially doing shows on the road, traveling the country and doing shows, all helped me to be now the cabaret and stage performer that I am. And also because, at a young age, at 14 and 15, I really decided to develop my craft with this by seeing everything I could and everybody I can. I was lucky enough to see Tony Bennett. I saw Barbra Streisand. I saw Aretha Franklin. I saw Jack Jones when he was playing the famous Oak Room that closed down, and Jack Jones recently passed away. I was also fortunate enough to see, Barbara Cook. I saw her master classes, but I also saw different genres. I saw, Bruce Springsteen and Neil Diamond. So, a lot of it was learning from everybody, but also then making it my own. And I think that's where the cabaret thing really does help, is making a song your own. And then when you do that, there's no competition and everything else is out the door.
And is that, before we go on to our next song, is that what all of you great singers have in common? And when you think of Barbara Streisand, when you think of Tony Bennett, um,
Yeah.
Neil Diamond, what is that? That one thing, is it they make it their own? Is that it?
Yeah, they take songs and they make it their own. You know, I remember there was a story in Barbara Cook's masterclass, and she was saying that she would, hear somebody else, and she'd be like, "Oh no, the competition is awful, whatever." But then she said she went to go see Mabel Mercer in concert, and Mabel Mercer, who was, I mean, people learn from Mabel Mercer. Sinatra learned from Mabel Mercer. They all talk about Mabel Mercer, about how she used the words and enunciated everything. And she said when she saw Mabel Mercer made the songs her own. And she said, once you do that, there's literally no competition. So, what I've found with what I do, especially with the tracks that I do, is making the songs my own. Because then when you do that, there's no competition.
Okay, here's our next song. This is Sometimes a Day Goes By.
Sometimes a day goes by, one whole entire day, when I don't think of her. 24 hours pass, I look around and find that I haven't thought of her. Not even when I'm somewhere we used to go. Not even if that someone we used to know. It's hardly every day. It's most unusual, in fact. I can't remember when.
So this brings us to our philosophical portion of the conversation that I know everyone looks forward to every week. And the title
Sure.
of this discussion is Like Father, Like Son. Martin, your biography describes you as an iconoclast. Quote, unlike jazz artist, Martin blurs in a good way in that he's drawing upon lots of different musical influences from musical theater, the jazz world, classical male singers. His influences are Sammy Davis, Bob Dylan, and Tom Jones, Barbra Streisand, end quote. However, you come from a legacy show business family, your father being a well-known New York City show businessman. When you personally describe your musical influences, you write, quote, my father, when I was about 5 years old, would walk me around and put me to sleep to the music of Sinatra and Rosemary Clooney, surrounding me when I was an infant. I never really had the contemporary music of that time, end quote. So tell us what show business meant to your father, and if you plan on bringing anything new to show business or simply continuing what your father began. Martin, we again are looking so back, right? Looking back to these old references. What about how is that new today? How are you making that authentic in your own way?
Well, I decided to make it authentic in my own way by kind of having, having a sense of that, you can do something different with the song, a different arrangement, a cool kind of hip kind of thing. Because, when you look at a lot of it, we can't keep this stuff in a box, because these were people of their time, but they also planned to be timeless kind of people, the people that I love. When you walk in a bar for forever, and it doesn't matter where it is, an open mic, a karaoke, wherever it is, you will always hear Sinatra. It will always be timeless. There will always be artists of only certain periods of time, but the people that I loved were people that were for everybody, that it wasn't just for one thing. And I think that, those people that influenced me, I try to always bring that. I always try to make what I do available to everybody. And that's by bringing in a light and bringing in a joy and a love of what I do and sharing it, because that's why we do what we do. We're not brought on this earth with our gifts to steal it and to hug it and to not. We are there to give it to other people. And that's always my goal, is to always share and give.
And Martin, why do you think your father was so adamant that he wanted you to go in to take this career path?
Well, it's funny because I don't think he was, he was adamant because he felt that this was the right thing for me. He was editorial director of Entertainment Weekly, when he was a journalist for Newsweek and was a 3-time Emmy Award winning sports writer and covered the world traveling Muhammad Ali. So, he knew something about this business and knew what would work and what didn't. And, knowing him, I knew that, if he thought this wasn't the right path for me, he'd be like, okay, whatever, knowing him. But because, he saw what I could do and listened and sat in, he felt, you know what? No, this is the right path for him. Because thank God, I think that I was very lucky and fortunate to have been blessed to have seen everybody, and I used to go to the Carlisle all the time, and find signs at the Regency, and I'd see all these people who were known and who were legends. Thank God for that, because I don't think that would have influenced me if I didn't get to do that. So I was always, I think, from a very young age, constantly learning. And I was thankful that my father had me do that. You know what I mean? Because this was my world. And it was my world since I was a kid. But now it's become even more of my world than it was then, I think.
Let's have a listen to our final song of tonight. This is "Oh, Look at Me Now."
I'm not the guy who cared about love. I'm not the guy who cared about fortunes and such. Never cared much. Oh, look at me now. I never knew the technique of kissing. I never knew the thrill I could get from your touch. Never cared much. Oh, look at me now. I'm a new man, better than Casanova at his best. With a new heart, brand new start. I'm so proud I'm busting my vest. And so I'm the guy who turned out a lover. Yeah, I'm the guy who laughed at those blue diamond rings. One of those things. Oh, look at me now.
Final thoughts, Martin. What do you wish all of us who listen to your new album that's coming up, going to be released in a few months, to your show on December 17th, if Frank Sinatra shows up, what do you hope he takes away?
Well, you know something? I hope that if Frank ever shows up, who knows? He might shoot me. I don't know. um, he'd chase after me with some sort of thing. Okay, whatever. Um, I hope that if Sinatra ever showed up, that he knew that I understood the words to what I am singing, because Sinatra was a lot about that. There was a story about him with his son, Sinatra Jr., who, Sinatra Jr. wasn't exactly his father, but he said, "What are you doing if you can't have passion and put it in the words?" I just, you know what I mean? And also, knowing Sinatra, knowing that world of Frank Sinatra, he wouldn't want people imitating him. I don't think he would have been such a fan of that, because when you look at people like Tony Bennett or Vic Damone, who were his favorite singers, they were not imitating him. I think that so many people have had this idea of what it is, but I don't think they've ever understood the whole meaning of Sinatra was about. It was he was literally doing a monologue with every song, and I hope that if he shows up with his Jack Daniels, that he will love that I do that. Don't kill me, Frank, please.
Let's see how we can stay in touch. Well, we've got, first of all, the upcoming show in the green room, and it's even available to be streamed. So
Yes, it
make
is. It's live stream.
So all of our participants, it's also available to them if they're not going to be in New York City at that time. So there's the link. I just put it there to, so it's again in December, upcoming show, As Long as I'm Singing. And Martin, if people want to reach out to you and ask you questions, make comments, is that they can do it through Instagram? Is that right?
Yes, they can. They can do it through the Instagram, through there. Just comment and ask me anything. I am available, and I will answer to you.
Okay, lovely. So we have, again, the tickets are available at thegreenroom.venutix.com. And so that's Martin's show coming up, As Long as I'm Singing. And then he can be reached at Martin,
I mean,
oh,
Martino, the showman.
Martino the Showman on
Yes.
Instagram. Perfect. Thank you so very much to Martin
Thank you.
Bonventre.
Ah, what a wonderful podcast this is.
You're so kind, thank you. So I'd just like to show us, we have here at www.sirianmore.com, you can find all information about upcoming shows, and you can even sign up for the weekly newsletter that I send out. It's kind of a greeting on Fridays to tell everyone to look forward to the weekend and give them exclusive insight into upcoming shows. As always, all information is available at www.simianmore.com. Once again, thank you so very much to Martin Bonventre.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you to Vienna Live sponsors, Victoria and Frederick Mulligan. Thank you to Abby Moser, Agnieszka and Benoit Rivolet, and Mary Schlesinger for their support of this show. Thanks to my cousin Mike, a marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or an engineer, they have a really cool tool you should check out. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants, who make it all worthwhile. From New York City and Washington, D.C., goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
See.